Many people say humans are naturally wired for multiple partners. But the real question is that actually human nature, or is it sometimes just an excuse to avoid discipline? Welcome back to Marriage Insight, a place where we talk honestly about love, marriage, truth, and the real matters of the heart. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating explainer on one of the most complex webs of human existence, our relationship structures. We're going to look at the dynamic tension between what we desire, how our environments shape us, and the ancient commitments we make to one another. This touches literally all of us, but man, it gets clouded by personal bias, right? So we're going to completely strip that away and look strictly at the data, the demographics, and the foundational historical texts to see what they actually tell us. Oh, and if you care about building healthier relationships and understanding love with maturity, please subscribe to Marriage Insight and follow along.
So here's the core question I really want you to chew on as we go through this. Is human nature truly wired for just one partner, or are we fundamentally drawn to many? I mean, this is a debate that's been raging across dinner tables and psychology labs for decades. To actually get it, we need to step back, take a breath, and look at this objectively, completely removing the judgment so we can just look at the raw mechanics of human behavior. To keep us from getting conversational whiplash, we've got a quick, structured roadmap. First, we'll look at the psychology of cheating. Second, polygyny in a cultural context. And third, the ancient monogamous ideal.
Okay, let's dive right into part one, the psychology of cheating, specifically looking at some UMD research on infidelity.
So a research team over at the University of Maryland decided to skip the theories and actually survey 562 adults who actively admitted to being unfaithful. And wow, they found a really complex map of motivations. They nailed it down to 8 primary factors for cheating. Anger, seeking revenge for past betrayal. Sexual desire, just wanting to try something new. A lack of love or falling out of passion. Neglect, feeling starved for respect and attention. Low commitment, where the boundaries just weren't clear. Situational factors, like high stress or maybe being intoxicated. A need for esteem to boost their self-worth. And finally, just a simple desire for variety.
Now, this brilliantly illustrates something absolutely crucial, and the lead researcher, Dylan Selterman, hit the nail on the head. He points out that we usually just assume infidelity is a symptom of a damaged relationship. But the data? It says it's not always that simple. Cheating can happen to anyone, even couples in seemingly rock-solid, stable relationships, because drivers like wanting variety or a sudden situational lapse don't necessarily reflect the day-to-day health of the actual primary partnership.
And the breakdown of these motivations across genders is incredibly revealing. The study found a pretty stark contrast. Men were significantly more likely to report being motivated to cheat by sexual desire, the craving for variety, and situational forces. Women, on the flip side, were way more likely to be motivated by a feeling of neglect, like not receiving enough love, respect, or attention at home. It really shows how completely different emotional and biological drivers can lead to the exact same boundary being crossed.
All right, moving on to part 2, polygyny in cultural context, looking at demographic research in sub-Saharan Africa.
So we are shifting gears now from secret, hidden infidelity to openly sanctioned systems. Researchers David Lawson and Mihiri Gibson focus specifically on polygyny, which is defined as a marriage where a man has more than one wife at the exact same time. We aren't talking about casual variety here, folks. We are talking about highly structured, formalized family units. Now, in the world of international development and global health, polygyny is almost always classified right out of the gate as a harmful cultural practice. Historically, researchers have presented data saying this family structure inherently damages child health, and they use that assumption to actively push for marital reform across sub-Saharan Africa. But Lawson and Gibson, they wanted to pause and ask, does the data actually support calling it universally harmful? And the sheer variability of the evidence they found is fascinating. When you really dig into the demographic and health surveys, the impact of a polygynous marriage on a child's health is all over the place. Yes, in certain ecological settings, harmful outcomes are absolutely observed, no question. But in other specific local settings, being in a polygynous household is completely inconsequential to child health. And get this, in some contexts, it actually appears to be beneficial. It turns out it depends entirely on local socio-ecological factors and what alternatives are actually available in those specific communities. So, the big takeaway we have to pull from this demographic research is that slapping a singular blanket label of harmful across all ecological and cultural settings totally ignores the complex reality on the ground. Human family structures adapt to their specific environments. We really need a nuanced stance here, recognizing that what works or doesn't work in one local context just cannot be universally projected onto another.
Which brings us to part 3, the ancient monogamous ideal and its historical and theological blueprints.
We've looked at modern desires and cultural adaptations, but now let's look at the ancient texts that laid down strict monogamy. I mean, the historical weight of these texts has shaped human behavior for millennia. It starts with this foundational blueprint from Genesis, the concept of two individuals becoming one flesh. It frames the union not as some contract of convenience, but as a total, foundational merging of lives that supersedes even the bond you have with your own parents. And it's amazing how the ancient texts really double down on the permanence of this structure. In the book of Matthew, the union is described as an unbreakable, sacred bond forged by the divine. It fundamentally rejects the whole idea of a relationship being a casual, temporary, or easily disposable arrangement. The idea is, once joined, the structure is meant to be permanent.
But what I find really fascinating is that these ancient texts don't just sit up in the clouds preaching abstract ideals. They get incredibly practical. They provide a strict framework and detailed mechanics for exactly how day-to-day boundaries and mutual responsibilities are supposed to function within this monogamous structure. And why? Well, to prevent the very infidelities we talked about back in our first lens.
Look at how explicitly 1 Corinthians chapter 7 breaks this down. Step 1, to avoid stepping out of bounds, each person has their own dedicated spouse. Step 2, render due benevolence, meaning active mutual care is a hard requirement, not a suggestion. Step 3 is honestly remarkable for its time, shared power. The text explicitly states that neither the husband nor the wife has power over their own body, but they actually yield it to each other. And step 4, absolute mutual consent. You cannot withdraw from one another without mutual agreement. It's just an incredible blueprint of personal discipline and equal partnership.
And you know that human desire for variety that the UMD researchers highlighted earlier? To counter that, the ancient texts offer this beautiful perspective from Proverbs. It places all the emphasis on cultivating lasting satisfaction, joy, and deep familiarity within a single, committed union over a lifetime, rather than constantly chasing the next new thing. It's a profound encouragement to find your variety and your joy right there within the vows you've already made.
Finally, part 4. Navigating human complexity, the synthesis of desire, culture, and vows. When you put all 3 of these lenses together, you get a remarkably complex picture of human relationships. To sum it all up, modern psychology proves we are pulled by a highly complex web of internal desires and situational temptations. At the exact same time, cultural demographics show us that relationship structures are incredibly elastic. They adapt heavily to local environments and survival needs. Yet standing against both of those forces, the ancient texts provide this powerful, enduring anchor of mutual responsibility, shared power, and strict devotion.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder. As you look at the structures and boundaries in your own life, ask yourself, between the pull of our biology, the shaping force of our culture, and the weight of our ancient vows, which force truly has the final say in shaping your relationships? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this gave you a clearer, more structured way to think about such a complex topic. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next one.